Welcome to episode 11 of the Locker Room Chat. I'm really excited about today's guest, someone who I do work quite closely with through SEN radio commentary. It is Hannah Kuhar. She was a 2025 co-captain of Manchester Spurs in the Elite League. That is the Jamaican League, and we're going to get some hot news of the press on that very soon. She's also an SEN commentator and an analyst at Champion Data, so knows everything that the teams are working on, all the little nitpick stats that they're after. Welcome.
What an intro, Maddie. I'm stoked to be here. Every day that you get to be on the podcast hosted by one of your childhood heroes. So, no, happy to be here.
Oh, you're too kind. As I said, breaking news, hot off the press. Currently, it is draft day in Jamaica. Now, we think SSN trading is hectic at the best of times, but there is a draft day in the Elite League for Jamaica. Please explain what is going on right now.
I wish more people knew about this league and how it works, because if you think SSN drama is one level, the Jamaicans, they know how to throw a party. So for context, I was the first non-Jamaican to be recruited into this league. And so last year I played, as you mentioned, with the Manchester Spurs. We lost the grand final, so still a touchy topic, but it means that the fire is still burning and we all feel like we've got some work to do, so hence why we're so passionate to return. But last year, how the recruitment worked was, imagine a bunker room where you had the coaches sitting around a table and you had all of the player names. And so the coaches assembled teams that they thought were balanced amongst like Pool A players. So typically that was your international girls, like your Sunshine Girls, that kind of caliber of player. And then you had your tier 2 players, the up and comers into this league. The coaches assembled even teams once they were all in agreement that these teams were even. So it took a number of hours, as you can imagine. Then the coaches drew one of those teams out of a hat, and that was the team that they were going to coach for the season.
That is unbelievable stuff. I mean, maybe that's what we do. We're off contracts at the end of this year. Why don't we have a draft day, get into the bunker room? Let's even out all the teams so we have no idea where players are going to end up. Let's do it. Why not? SSN, I reckon we go there.
It is honestly very similar to what is happening right now behind closed doors within the SSN. And I wish Fox Netball or Nine Network had some cameras in this process, because it would be so delicious as a fan to see who's being seeded where and how it works out. This year, though, in Jamaica, it's a little bit different given the league. I think it's going to be a bit of a shorter season given that the Com Games are coming up. So they had to really squeeze it in before Com Games happen. Next Friday, I'll be flying over to Kingston. It'll take me a couple of days to get there. But how the recruitments work this year is each coach will be retaining 7 of their list from last year. And then the remaining players, I think it was 3, they go back into the draft system and then they work like the AFL draft in reverse order. So the team that finishes last gets the first draft pick, second last, second pick, blah, blah, blah. And then they do that until all the teams are filled. I am not sure whether I'm in the retained 7 or not. Obviously, you have conversations with your coaches, which give you a good idea of where it's going to end up, but just waiting for official confirmation as to how it's all going to work.
Well, love it. I'm so glad I got you on today to hear all of that stuff. Honestly, it gives me a little bit of trauma. It's like, high school sports teams where you got your two captains and you're like waiting to be picked. I look forward to hearing where players fall, especially for you. Can you go one better and get to the grand final with the Manchester Spurs? Anyway, everyone, stay tuned for that, because I think Jamaica draft day, I think they've got something good there.
We're going to derail Locker Room Chat and we're going to make it the first official podcast of the Elite League.
There's a hot take for you right there. Let's have a look at what round 10 provided and a recap of the SSN. First game off was Lightning 66 to the Vixens 56. Huge upset, really. And a lot of people have been talking about the Vixens. Oh, they had 3 out. But to me, when I was watching it, it wasn't really the fact that they were missing a goalkeeper or even a little bit of depth in that mid-court with a Mundy. It was the shooting circle that was really struggling a lot to get the flow and get the movement. So how was your take on it? Because I think everyone thought it was an upset and thought, it was just an off day for the Vixens. But the Lightning kind of showed a few little splinters in the Vixens' armour.
I think yes and no. I still think it is an anomaly of a match and we should treat it that way. Obviously, when you take 3 players out of any netball team, I'm talking local netball to high levels, that destabilizes not only the on-court performance, but also those characters who help galvanize a side. And although the outs weren't exactly your barometers of the team, like if a Maloney's out, then suddenly everyone's feeling nervous because people put a lot of trust in those kinds of leaders. I'm not suggesting that's exactly what happened with the Vixens. However, I think there still is that vibe piece where you've got significant outs, a number of outs. Suddenly everyone's questioning how things are going to work. And I think that was evident with the way in which the goalers were moving, as you have said. It is interesting from the Lightning perspective, though, because they did do some things that I thought, should we see more of this or less of this? And I know last week in your episode, you were very firm on this, and I know you are generally quite firm on what is the go with the Lightning. That match was the first time they've used only a starting 7 for the whole match this season. So maybe my question to you is this what we need to see more of? Was it a case of Lightning building that consistency and then against a Vixens who were a bit temperamental, they were able to shine through?
I actually think that's a bang on point you make, is the fact that they had stability with their 7. We've been talking about where you put players. There's been a lot of change. Some teams don't work with all of that. You do see a Thunderbirds on the end. They change a lot of the time, but that's been part of their brand and part of their makeup for a very long time. I loved the fact that she did stay and have that stability across the court, because you could just see those connections build over the game and hold on. Sometimes they're not working at the start, and that's why she's forced to make those changes. So do like the core group staying on. For the Vixens to get caught off guard and then not be able to find a way, I was like, teams really need to start strong and then be able to push from there. And maybe that's actually how you beat the Vixens. Second game on the Saturday was the Firebirds 71 to the Giants 64. Now, they're both at the bottom. It was actually quite a hotly contested match. And I think a lot of people were thinking, look, this could probably go either way. But there's just something about the Firebirds that you can see is really starting to build. I know they haven't had as many wins as maybe they would have liked, or maybe as fans we would have liked to see this season. If this is 7th and 8th, you can just see something in the Firebirds that you're just not seeing in the Giants, I feel. Where do you see both of these teams heading into round 11 of the season?
Maybe I have more faith in the Giants than you, going off that vibe there. I thought the Giants, they have some really compelling moments. That first half was their highest scoring half in 2026. That was their highest scoring half against the Firebirds ever in all of their matchups. So I thought they've come out strongly. But to go up, so they were up by 7 halfway through the third quarter and then just fell away. I think what the Giants need are their whole spine of the team to be playing strongly, because it feels like the performances where they have one player having a stinker, it goes poorly. Dwyer, she had 8 of the Giants' 15 general play turnovers. It's really rare for a player to have 8, especially more than half of their own team's general play turnovers. She becomes a bit of a weaker link for the team. So I honestly think the Giants, they deserve that win. They are having some really lovely moments, but yeah, when one player is the source of a lot of bad energy, hard to know where the solution's going to lie. I think everyone needs to bring that consistency up, but credit to the Firebirds for being able to wrangle the win.
On the Sunday, we saw an upset in obviously what was a huge milestone and celebration in the West for Imelda Aitken-George, beating the game's record. Kath Cox had to hand it over at the end, and we spoke about it last week, but I think it's a great honour for Imelda, who's been such a huge part of netball, especially in SSN. But unfortunately, the Fever couldn't get the job done. They went down 57 to the Swifts 63. The Swifts have been struggling to find that consistency in their form. And then a lot of people now after that win are like, oh, well, maybe 4th spot is up for grabs for the Swifts. I'm still not 100% convinced. An upset for the West, which probably showed 2 weeks in a row not being able to score volume, not getting enough attempts. For having a tall shooter and dominating the 1 point time to only score around the 40, it's just not good enough, is it?
No, and to go back to your previous point for Swifties who are feeling optimistic, I can tell you you have a 9% chance of finishing in 4th and a 1% chance of finishing in 3rd. So a 10% chance of making finals, I'm happy to rule them out. Yes, the Swifts have brilliant moments, and I think it's the grace to grace connection, which is the standard of this team. If they're getting balls in quickly, easily, they look $1,000,000. When the mid court is struggling to find its feet, when the defenders aren't finding ball, it's really hard to build a case for the Swifts. I'm very unconvinced by Fever at the moment. As you've mentioned, they've had not only losses, they've had bigger losses, and it just feels like that mid court is still quite rattled. You can tell the breath of relief when Alice Teague-Neal is putting balls in and she's got a lovely feed, but I think the midcourt around her, I don't know if they've got the props to get them to premiership status this year.
It's a good call you make on that one, I think. And last game was the Thunderbirds 55 to the Mavs 51. Another close contest. Mavs from the very start, they were in chase mode for the Thunderbirds and they just continued to ride it out. Yes, they got out to a 10-goal lead, the Thunderbirds, and the Mavs brought it back. But I think that just kind of attests to the really good team that they are, that even when momentum swings and things like this happen in a game, momentum goes one way, they might get another run, but they stayed really cool, calm, and collected. And whenever they had their team huddles, it was, you're doing this, we're doing this, let's just get the job done. They're really good role players. They understand what they need to do in those pressure moments and they executed. So as much as they thought, oh gosh, it seemed like a bit of a loss or the vibe seems like a loss because they had such a lead, these are the moments and these are the scenarios that really build premiership contenders in the making during a season, because now you know that even when a team comes back and pushes, we can stay strong mentally and physically at the task at hand.
You're so right. And I think you summarized it really well with Laddie Wilson at the end of the match, where it was like, okay, you can win in a beautiful way, you can win ugly, but you need all types of wins. And I think we saw that with Fever last year, where they weren't pressure tested throughout the season. And then it came to finals and they fell apart, as opposed to the Vixens, who did it the hard way. They finished fourth. They had a lot of really, really close matches, which gave them all the training grounds that you can't replicate in your Monday to Friday training. And that's why they won the premiership. I think the Mavericks box was one of the most interesting things to come out of that match. I thought the way in which they set it up was so incredible, and keeping an eye on Jamie Lee Price. I mean, this is getting a little technical now, but usually in a box, you'd be happy to put some arms over pressure if someone comes into your bubble. But the way they set it up is if someone's coming into that front bubble and Jamie Lee Price would usually be responsible for that player, she's dropping on to what we call destination pressure, where the destination of the ball is going to be. That put the Thunderbirds in a really tricky position, and suddenly they had to work really hard. We're going to talk about ball security a little later on in the show, but that was their moment to say, hang on, we're not scoring quickly. How do we cope with this? That was the lesson that they had on the weekend. I think it'll serve them really well heading into finals.
It's a great point you make, because that is a Richo special right there, where the middies out the front drop back into that middle channel to avoid someone punching up through the middle to break open the box or zone. Move of the week was pretty much putting Charlotte Sexton onto goalkeeper. I know they didn't win it, but I was like, you know what? This has put Alma-Ray Vandenberg on notice. If Jessie can't get the job done, we've got Sexton on the backup to come in, add a little bit of extra height, put a bit of doubt in the feeder's mind. Like Grenville out the front, if they've got that up their sleeves, if they can just get those moments, get those combinations firing and ticking, and it has been a bit of a question mark all season for them, is consistency on both ends firing. But they look the goods, and really, fourth spot is there unless they royally stuff it up.
Just off the back of that quickly, it felt like the first time ever, Maddie, that we had seen the second generation of Mavs work together on court. Like, there was a moment where, as you mentioned, Sexton goalkeeper, Grenville goal defense, McDonald goal attack, Pallavi goal shooter. I mean, you add Jamie Lee Price as the center. Wow, that's going to be the next core potentially, pending how contracts pan out at the end of the year. But you can see that that's what they're building towards, and geez, that would get you excited for the future of the Mavericks.
Just a real recap on our blinders of the last week. I last week said that Liz Watson was going to have 25 goal assists. She only had 17. She had 27 feeds, so she didn't quite get it. If you're a long-term listener, you would understand I have not got one right for the season. So don't ever back me in on a bet with my blinder. Georgia last week did say the Thunderbirds and Mavs game was the one to watch. She did think that the Mavs would bring it within 3. They lost by 4. She was closer than me, so it's a half pass mark for her. So I can't wait to hear yours at the end of today's episode as well. Let's move straight into the trending netball news. A few things that popped off this week. Dylan Nexhip retired from the Kelpies, number 103. He's an assistant coach, defensive specialist coach at the Swifts. He's been a huge part of pioneering the Kelpies and where they stand right now. So great interview through the Swifts and the Kelpies on his retirement. I've been able to watch him. He's not only just a player, but he's also their captain. He's had a great career and, as I said, pioneered the sport for the men to be where it is today. So congratulations to Dylan.
He is such a legend of netball. Note, I'm not saying men's netball. It is netball, what he's been able to do. And I think obviously there are men who have led the way for integration between the men's and women's games, and we're seeing that within the SSN. Something that's really snuck under the radar, and I don't know whether it was deliberate messaging or non-messaging. We have 2 head coaches. It feels like no one has spoken about this season, and whether it's because some netball people feel threatened that, oh, we've got a quarter of the league being run by men, their jobs being taken away from women. I'm very much a mixed player. I've come through that pathway. I think it's necessary that we all work together. And this is something that should be celebrated. And I think the success that Dylan is having within the New South Wales pathway, of course, he's been a Victorian. He's come through a lot of country netball pathways, another thing that needs to be celebrated. However, why he's revered and thought of so highly, especially within New South Wales, is because of the work that previous men have done throughout the Sonics environment, what the Kelpies used to be kind of known as. And you look at the Dan Ryans of the world and what they've been able to do, Jared Murphy, what he's been able to do. They've done it as players, then becoming coaches. We've only seen the tip of the iceberg, basically, but we need to recognise this moment as pivotal in netball history. And yeah, I can't wait to see where he goes next.
Another thing that caught my eye was the Commonwealth Games uniform was announced. Now, interesting enough, Sophie Dwyer is the model of the uniform. A lot of comments was like, oh, this means she's in. Why would you be showcasing the uniform? I don't know, but this photo may have happened a while ago. One thing to note with people is that just because she's in the photo doesn't mean she's confirmed. People like me have been pretty harsh on Dwyer, saying I wouldn't be picking on current form and other star players that could miss out if we continue to go with what we've gone with previously. Coaches of SSN teams know whether their players are in or not. Players will find out this current week. It will be announced on Fox during the Pivot Show after round 12, so stay tuned for that. But what is your take on this little sneaky social media post? Is she in? Is she out? What do you think?
Yeah, I had the same thoughts as every other netball fan when I was scrolling. I went, hang on a second. Of all people to model the uniform, this is a really, really interesting one. I have no exclusive insights here. Marketing departments don't do these things for no reason. Maybe it was just the photos had to be taken in Sydney. She happened to be in Sydney. It might have been one of those logistical ones. However, yeah, I look forward to finding out like every other fan when the team is announced.
Absolutely. I mean, you've got a captain, you've got a vice captain. Just fly them up for the day. It's pretty simple. This next segment, I'm looking forward to this. I pretty much said to you, this is a Hannah Kuhar exclusive insight. You are the guru when it comes to stats. You know all the ins and outs, what's trending. Is there a sweet spot for anything? I want you to tell us, what should we be buying into? Because even as commentators, we throw stats out there all the time. I want to get your take on it, Han.
So I know that everyone is looking at this ladder and trying to make sense of what's going on. I want to share with you the exact numbers and the likelihood of these teams. Let's get straight to the facts. So at the moment, as the top 4 sits, Adelaide Thunderbirds 1, Vixens 2, Fever 3, Mavericks 4. Just so it's clear, the Thunderbirds are most likely to finish in top spot. They've got a 75% chance of finishing first. Vixens are most likely to finish in second spot. They have a 71% chance of finishing second. Fever, most likely to continue, finish in third. 6% chance of that. And the Mavericks, this is the spot that everyone's looking for, sneaking into fourth. They have a 46% chance of finishing fourth. As it stands, the Lightning in fifth, they have a 19% chance of making finals. Swifts have a 10% chance of making finals, and the Firebirds have a 3% chance of making finals. So statistically, very unlikely that we're going to see this top 4 change. But the question you asked me, Maddie, is what really matters and what numbers matter? How does this link back to netball? Something I'm really big on as a netballer and probably as a mid-quarter, I think we're speaking the same language. Two things. One, ball security. Two, risk appetite. These are two concepts that I think are undervalued in netball and definitely under-described. I don't know why we don't speak about it more. Ball security is the ability to hold possession. This looks like on the court something like a Melbourne Vixens, very, very good. If you need to play triangles, you keep playing triangles and you play them to death until your goalers are ready. That's having high ball security. Low ball security, to me, looks like the Firebirds pinging it in. They're happy to look for the long wishful feed. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But that has a relationship with risk appetite. How hungry you are to get ball or to go out. As a goalkeeper, do you hunt the ball or do you stay locked into a man-on-man? There's a bit of a correlation that I'm seeing in the numbers. So this is what I bring to you today.
So when you say ball security, what stats are you looking for in that? So you said centre pass conversion, your general play turnovers would obviously have to be low. Are they the two things?
I'm so glad that you asked, Maddie. It's brilliant that you're already coming up with these ideas. So if we define ball security as centre pass percentage, that's the percentage of centre passes that get translated into goals. That's the other stat that I think is quite important that we don't talk about enough is the turnover to goal percentage. So noting the difference between a turnover and a gain. A gain is something where you're doing an action to gain you the ball, such as an intercept. A turnover is when the other team loses the ball and your team is trying to convert that into a goal. When we look at centre pass percentage and turnover to goal percentage, and you start adding up those, Adelaide Thunderbirds, let's use them as an example. At the moment, they're first for centre pass conversion. They're first for turnover to goal percentage. Guess where they finish on my imaginary table? First, absolutely. Do you want to know for how many teams that correlates with their position at the moment? 5 out of 8. However, the middle 3, they're like 1 apart.
So really, the people that are just struggling with that consistency are the ones fighting for that fourth spot, which is your Mavs, your Lightning, your Swifts, the bottom secure, the top secure. It's the middle where it starts to get a bit murky. And really, depending on what day and what team rocks up, we don't know what they're going to provide.
Completely. And I think a lot of netball fans might be listening to this and saying, well, no, SH1T, obviously, if you're scoring off centre pass and you're able to score off turnover, you're going to win. However, I think it's important that it's not necessarily the teams who get the most turnovers who have a high percentage, or it's not the teams who score off gain. It's not about those numbers. It's really about with those opportunities, what are they doing with it? It's just as much about your ability to find turnovers as it is the pressure that you're putting on the other side. Last year, top 3 were the top 3. 2024, the top 4 were the top 4. There's a lot of consistency between the years and these kinds of numbers. So I just think if you want to know the numbers that really matter, pay attention to the centre pass conversion, but also look at those goals that is coming from the source of turnover.
I actually really like this because I agree. It's not the gain to goal conversion. It's the unforced turnovers to goal conversion. So that's the stat that you're talking about. And I think the way that you got to define it right is the gains are the pressure that you've put on through strategic defensive pressure. These turnovers are brain fades. It might be an extended pass. Yes, it might come from your pressure, but they're kind of like added bonuses because it was like, oh, it fell in our lap, or they passed it to us, or all of a sudden they've made a turnover or they've made a poor decision and we haven't really even had to do much. I love it. Centre pass conversion, unforced turnover conversion, and then the gains to goal. That's really just your little added extra. If you get some hand on ball, how good is that? I did want to ask one question. I just think that there's a lot talking about with the Mavericks. Oh, they're highly penalised, but they're right in the mix. I think it's a strategy. They're like, we're going to set our tent really early in the game. We're going to see what the umpires are calling. We'll make slight adjustments. But I know that if I was getting hit in contests for a whole 60 minutes, how exhausting is that when you do get to that final quarter, when sometimes that is when your highest decision-making skills have to be on point, but you're starting to fatigue. I just want to know, what's the go with penalties and how is it affecting maybe outcomes of games, if it is at all?
I think your analysis is bang on there, Maddie. The Mavericks, they're 7th in the league for centre pass percentage. So very, very low. How are they in 4th? You look at what they're doing to get those gains. As you mentioned, highly penalised, yes, but they're second in the league for goals scored from the source of a gain. Very efficient from gains. If they can't score for a centre pass, well, the gains are really, really helping them out. It's a question without notice. Is there a direct correlation between penalties, gains, and I guess overall efficiency? I can't tell you that right now. However, as a player, certainly you are shitting yourself if Jamie Lee Price is about to hunt you and you know you have to take a ball hard. Team know that the Mavericks are a really physical team like that. I love what they're able to do off body as they're able to play a box and they can dominate through that. Yeah, it's definitely a decision to be a highly contested team. I think it's happy days for the Mavs.
And if they make the finals, they're a real wild card, I think, because as you just mentioned, if they're high in their game conversion and they're high in their turnover conversion, imagine what they're going to be when they eventually get their center pass conversion up, because that is what you are getting every second time and you're in complete control about. Huge, huge opportunities there for the Mavericks if they can get it right. Thank you so much for that insight. I think there's some great stats in there because I think we hear about it a lot of the time, but we don't actually know what it counts for and why it's really important. Get onto Champion Data. You can always follow along during an SSN game. I love to look at it on the sidelines. So we'll put in the link in our little bio as well. Let's wrap it up. Let's have a look at round 11. It's coming up. Giants, Thunderbirds, Mavs, Lightning, Firebirds, Fever, Vixens, Swifts. Han, do you have a game to watch and are you prepared to put a blinder on the line? That is my real question to you.
You can't come on this show and not have a blinder. So, absolutely. The match to watch for me is the Mavericks and the Lightning because of the finals ramifications that we've already alluded to. They're both hunting that fourth spot. So, this match is obviously going to be integral. Also, Riley Batchelor's 50th and First Nations round. So, there's a lot to celebrate throughout this round. The Mavericks have never beaten the Lightning. So I think, firstly, that's going to be really interesting to see if Mavericks can continue to break new ground. The Lightning, as we highlighted, made no positional changes last week. Prior to last week, they averaged 12 per game. So I'm interested to see what teams we see fielded, particularly on the Lightning side of things. It's going to be huge. My blinder, keep your eyes on Shimona Nelson. There is a correlation between her number of goal attempts and whether they win or lose the Mavericks. The Mavs have had 5 losses this season, 2 of which were only by 1 goal. So taking those 3 losses by more than 1, does it shock you that those matches were her least number of attempts this season?
What is a sweet spot of a number? Playing with Shimona, I would have always said around about a 50.
You're right. She's in the 50s, even 60s. The most goal attempts she's taken this season was 61. That was in the 9-point win over the Sunshine Coast Lightning. So we'll see if she gets to those kinds of numbers in this round.
Well, for me, I'm going to say the Vixens and the Swifts is a game to watch as well because I think this is really a testing time. You said there's only 10% chance for the Swifts, but I reckon if they can do this, maybe that just rises ever so slightly. I'm going to say the Swifts are going to get up this weekend, and I'm going to say Grace White is going to top it with a triple-double. So she's going to have double digits in the shooting volume, double digits in the goal assist, and double digits in the center pass received. It's a long shot, but I've lost them all so far, so I don't really care. So we'll just throw it out there anyway.
Big call. The Swifts haven't won at John Cain Arena since 2022, so that'll be crazy. The Vixens haven't lost at John Cain Arena this season, so it's a big call, Maddie, but I absolutely love it.
Thank you so much for joining us, Hannah. I really appreciate your time, insight, and expertise when it comes to stats. Have a good time in Jamaica, wherever you end up.
I can confirm as we were recording, I have been retained by the Manchester Spurs. So I look hopefully going one match further. Let's win the grand final this year. Appreciate all the support, Maddie.
Sigh of relief. We're ending up at Manchester Spurs. All the very best. We can't wait to watch. Thank you again for joining us and all the best to everyone playing netball this weekend.